Every haunting has a beginning and an end. But in this place, one becomes the other. Step closer. The lantern's glow will guide you. What you are about to hear are true stories of hauntings all over the world. Welcome to Help, I'm Haunted. Hello, my darlings. Help, we are haunted. It's been a day, hasn't it? I don't like this color. I don't know why that tag looks like this. Why? I have to fix that because that will drive me crazy. You know how that is? You know how that is? Where am I here? Where am I? No. Yeah, that's better. Okay. StreamYard is the wonky time today, but thank you so much and welcome. And I'll try not to hit the microphone. Welcome, welcome, my darlings. It is that time. Hello, welcome, hello, and welcome, my darling Candy. You stay put there for a minute, my darling. I got something to show. But welcome to Help, I'm Haunted. It's Thursday, September the, have to check, 18th of 2025. We're coming closer to the October spooky. And you're going to love tonight. You see this? I changed from the haunted house to the haunted hospital. And believe me, this is very close to what it looked like in my mind. And it was still a functioning hospital. But I'm going to tell you all about it in just a minute. Thank you so much, my darling. I've got just so much to tell you. Oh, I look like I have a graduation cap. Thank you. Let me, you know what? Let me turn up my lighting just a little bit. Maybe that'll help. Oh, no. Anyway, so thanks for being here, everyone. Tonight, we're going to be talking about haunted hospitals, haunted morgues. And this is a story you don't want to miss. So while you can, run, grab your snacks, your goodies, your drinks. Let me turn a light off here because I can tell it is reflecting. There we go. Thinking of me. So when I made this backdrop, this literally looks very close to the place that I was at, including, if you can see here, this veranda on the second floor. But it's not really a second floor. It's a third floor. Because down underneath on this side are tunnels. This hospital that I went to was built during the Civil War. It was a hospital, and then it turned into kind of like a retirement home. And then it went into a mental asylum. Then it went back to a hospital. And when I was there, there was only one wing open, and it was over here. Now, this hospital, even though it felt like it was in the country, oh no, you don't have to worry about, I'm not going to announce where I am. You don't have to worry about it. No, nobody's going to find me. No, I'm not going to announce. Don't worry. Don't worry. So this whole thing came about when I was working on this psychic line. Now, give you a little bit of backstory. This hospital, again, it looked like it was in the country, but it was not. It was at the end of a road. And just a few feet from it were things like a convenience store. And there was a fast food place, a very small fast food place. But this place was isolated. Had some, well, you can't see them, bony trees. And the night that I visited, the sky looked just like this. I'm always lucky. So the reason I went was because this one mother called the psychic line. And she said, you got to help me. I think I'm going crazy. And it happened to be that she was semi sort of local. I was close enough to this hospital where maybe within an hour drive. So I knew exactly when she mentioned it, what it was, where it was. And I actually didn't think that it was operational. So the weird part is I took this call. And this call was this mother wanting to know if it is possible for someone to communicate after they passed away. Well, you know how I am. The answer is yes. But getting into that over a phone without knowing a backstory is in itself, because you just don't know who's calling. You don't know. You know what I mean? You don't know, and you got to be careful of those sort of kind of things. So we're talking. She gets more comfortable with me, and she tells me this story about how she had, I think it was a Life 360, something like that. There was something, air tags weren't a thing at that point. So it was something. It was something that she had, that her son had, that it would track. Now, I don't know. It was back then. I don't know what it was. And she called me and said her son always texted her and said, look, I'm here. I'm here. It was not a psych hospital. It was a regular hospital when I visited, but this wing, it was kind of like the left. It was a very small county, and it was these people that were left. There were like only 3 doctors. There was a handful of patients, a handful of nurses, and 2 coroners. So she said her son would always call her and let her know that she had arrived at a particular place. And this time he didn't call. But she kept getting an indication from his phone or whatever it was that he had stopped somewhere. So she thought, okay, he probably met with friends. It's okay. And an hour went by. 2 hours went by. 3 hours went by. The night is going, and she starts getting worried. She's not hearing from him. So she starts calling. And the phone goes to voicemail. And the phone is pinging. So she thinks, okay, I'm going to look up the address. Well, the address was inside this morgue. So she went down, because the morgue is on the bottom floor. And for many of you that don't know, in the south of the United States, pardon me, a lot of these older hospitals that were built like during the Civil War, and they would have morgues on a 3rd floor, but then they would have tunnels. So in case the enemy were coming, those that could move, because they always had scouts that would go ahead, because they would just take over the hospitals and unalive anyone who was in the hospital. So they would take those people that could be moved easily and get them down through the tunnels and block the way into the tunnels, and they would go out in that way. So 1850s, 1860s, and into the late 1860s too. So those tunnels were down there. Just keep that in mind. So this woman who called me said that her son, sorry, I've got it ringing. Someone's trying to come through. So her son phone or whatever had been pinging, and it was at this address. She did not know that it was the morgue. She didn't know that it was a hospital, because it was something like, and it wasn't named because it had gone through so many changes. It wasn't named like County Hospital or the hospital of the spookiest county in the state of Tennessee, and, blah, blah, blah. So she noticed, that there were the convenience store and a fast food. So she just thought maybe he was hanging out with friends. So she started making phone calls. She called the police department, and they said, "Ma'am, that's the hospital at the end of so-and-so road," because you would pull up. It was right at the end of this road, at like the end of a cul-de-sac, one way in, one way out. She went there. Pounds on the door, because they keep the doors locked. You can't get into those places, because this place was just like abandoned, dilapidated, looking nasty, looking horrible. And there were people over here that were older and elderly, and unfortunately, families had forgotten, or families wanted to forget. You know how that is. So she goes up and knocking on the door. Finally, a nurse comes to the door and says, "Can I help you?" And she said, "Yes. I want to know where my son is. My son's phone showed that he was here, and I want to know." And she said, "Well, what's his name?" They went through this all, and she said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, he's not here." She said, "He is here." "Well, where is it?" And she was showing. She said, "That's so odd." So then she said, "Wait here for a minute." So my client was waiting in the main vestibule, right here, as they call it. They came over and got her and said, "Ma'am, can you come down here for a minute?" So they went down to the 3rd floor, and she said if she wasn't so focused on finding her son, that was the creepiest, crawliest tunnel, like a haunted house of hello. And she said, but it didn't faze her, because she was on a mission. So she said they went up to this metal door, and she said the metal door it looked like it was rusted. It had a band of metal in the middle, all the way around, and these rivets all the way. It was a heavy door. She said the nurse knocks on the door. Someone opens the door and says, "Yes, can I help you?" My client looks past the person that answered the door and saw a gurney, and there was a sheet over a person, but she recognized the jeans and the shoes were her son. She pushed past these people, pulled the sheet off, and it was her son. There was something that had happened, and they brought him there. And it's like nobody thought to contact her. He was just laying there, and he had been laying there, they said, for at least 10 hours on that gurney, because they were going to start trying to have someone. And of course, she lost it. And, they called the police. The police helped her home. It was bad. So when she calls me, she's asking, pardon me, can my son contact me? And I said, listen, God is a very compassionate God. And yes, I believe that many times you can get past that veil. And she said, I keep hearing him say, Mom, Mom, Mom. And she said, I've looked you up and you've done paranormal investigations, haven't you? And at that time, I was on Facebook, paranormal investigations, hello. I was all over the place, had a website, paranormal. I was out in it. And I would usually go by myself. And I said, yes, yes, I do. And she said, I will hire you if you will go there and see if my son's there. Now, that's normally something that I would not do, but hey, I'm a mom, right? We're moms. I would want to know. And how am I supposed to say, oh no, I'm this paranormal investigator, but you're on your own, lady? No, I can't do that. Not at all. So I made an arrangement. I called the hospital. I called the police department. I said, look, this is what I want to do. I'm here for this. And they did not like it. But what are you going to do? It's kind of a public place. It was not a private hospital. It was a public place. So I made arrangements with one of the nurse and one of the particular people that was in the morgue overnight. Wasn't a coroner. It was one of those people that sat there, just made sure everything was kosher, going the way that it should, you know. I get there. I've got all my equipment. Everything is going great. This young girl comes out. Now, first of all, I have a friend that I went to high school with in Ohio who is actually a mortician. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how anybody does it, but God bless them because hello. So she called the morgue and said, look, I can vouch for her because, having somebody come in there and just want to sit with a lot of equipment, that's kind of weird. I mean, to them, they're into death and, that sort of thing doesn't bother them. So I get in there and there's this young girl who is apprenticing, something like a Tuesday night. And I'm talking with her and she comes through and we're just talking and I'm just I want to be quiet, but it was like she was so glad to see me. She wanted to see me. And finally she said, I'm going to take you back to the place where this young man was. And I said, that'd be great. Do you have a chair? Because I can't stand this whole time. I'm going to be here overnight. And at this point, it was like right after midnight. Sky looking like this. Hello. And University of Findlay. Very, very good. Very good, my darling. Ohio is beautiful. So I'm sitting there. And now I grounded myself. I did all the things. We don't have to go through all that. So I'm sitting there. And sometimes when I go on these I just want to become a fixture. I don't want to go in, hello, I'm this. What year is it? What this? Hello, who are you? Here, I want you to move this ball. I want you to flick this light. I want you to talk into this. I want you to do this. And most times, that energy has to kind of feel you out a little bit. And that's why anybody who wants to go on investigations needs to remember that our world, the way they're looking at it, is just as weird as sometimes when we look at their world, because we're on two different dimensions. It's like the door cracks open and hello. They get to peek around and say, oh, hello, hi, there. So I'm sitting there. Now I'm going to tell you, this place stinks. It stinks. I'm not going to tell you. You can imagine. Don't ruin your snacks. And it's one of those things you become nose blind. So I'm just kind of sitting there. I took water with me. I don't ever, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't ever, one day, but not now. I don't ever take pop. I don't take crumbly snacks with me. Sometimes I'll take gum if I need to have like a little sugary, pick me up or something like that. But I rarely eat on investigations. I don't take anything crunchy to eat because that whole thing. I don't wear jewelry as much as I'd like to, except my power ring. I wear my glasses. I wear black. Hello, what's new? And that's it. I'm sitting there. And of course, this young girl, I can hear her, she's working. She's moving around. I can hear the pencil, scribing. I can hear a lot of things. It was just quiet. Like almost frightening quiet. Sarah, I will tell you about the Mansfield Reformatory. I was born in that area. I know I've got so many stories. I can tell you about it. And it's really something. So yeah, I'll tell you about it one day. So I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I hear a huff. Now that huff didn't come from this young lady. It was like a that type of a huff. And I thought, you're welcome, Sarah. And I thought, oh, here we go. Here we go. Somebody's showing up. Here we go. Because my darlings, these shows like Zach, they probably take about 25 hours worth of footage to get maybe 15 minutes of something. And a lot of it is scripted. So they can't be quiet. They can't do like an exhale. That's right. But it was like an intentional huff. And you could tell it came from a man. And I thought, oh, here we go. Now, I did not know, but I was sitting probably not more than 4 feet from a bank of drawers. You know what the drawers are, where you open up the door and you slide out the thing and it has somebody on it. So and you could see there were some bodies. Some were in bags. One was under a sheet, all that. So I could tell that this girl must have heard things like this before because she went quiet. She stopped. And finally I heard her chair move and she came over and she said, is it okay if I sit here and talk to you for a minute? And I said, of course it is. And she said, I hear things down here and it bothers me. I said, what kind of things do you hear? Is it normal body things, like when you bring someone in, because your body is adjusting to that, your spirit is no longer there, so your meat suit is left behind and it is adjusting to the living organs no longer being around? What, or not around, but functioning? What is it? And she said, no. She said, I know those sounds. And I said, okay. And she said, did you just hear that? And I said, yeah, I did. I thought maybe it was a body or something. She said, mm-mm. I hear it when we have no one in here. I said, what do you think it is? She proceeds to tell me about this Civil War story about one of these lieutenants who was trying, the hospital was under siege, was trying to get to the tunnel and didn't make it before he was injured very badly. And they opened the door and let him in, but they couldn't treat him. And they all thought it was him. They call him Lieutenant Baxter. And I said, what do you think, Lieutenant Baxter? Do you have anything to show that there's Lieutenant Baxter here? And she said, come here. So I'm walking through, and seriously, this morgue seemed like it encompassed the whole lower level of the hospital. It felt like I was just walking forever. And there were all kinds of different stages and stations and like that. And she's like, look there. And on the wall was a picture of Lieutenant Baxter. And good looking young man in uniform. And they thought it was him. I said, okay. I said, but I am here to see if this young man that we talked about last week or so, 10 days ago, is here. And she looked at me and she said, if you stay long enough, you'll hear him. And usually I'm not affected, but it was like all of a sudden this energy came over me, and it was like I felt tears like I am right now. And I said, okay, I'm here. What are you doing for breakfast? She said, I've got coffee. And she said, we can send out. She said, the corner store over there, it's like this country, you have a country store that sells biscuits and gravy and, all that other stuff. And she said, they'll bring over coffee and biscuits and gravy, anything you want. I said, I'm down for it. Let's have breakfast when time comes. She said, okay, there you go. So I go back to the original little place that we were sitting. Better lit, a better feeling environment. And she said, she gets a phone call downstairs. And she said, oh, I got to go upstairs. Are you going to be okay? I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to be fine. Oh, yeah, I'll be fine. Just leave me down here. And me, do you have any peach pie? So I didn't say that, but hey, why not? Why not ask? So she leaves, and I'm sitting there, and the air starts to change. It just feels thick. Like if you want to move your arm, you're almost feeling like you're trying to dredge your arm through water, that it's heavy, and that you just want to, you just want to push this environment, this air. Then I hear it. There's a knock coming from one of the drawers that I'm sitting by. Now, I'm going to tell you, my darlings, there were bodies in there. And the doors were closed and they were locked. So it's not going to be like Night of the Living Dead and they're going to come out, But I'm hearing, and I'm like, oh. And I waited because I thought, well, maybe, me being me, maybe it's a pipe. Maybe it's a water pipe. Maybe the building makes noises that sound like a knock. Maybe, so I'm sitting there just real quiet because, I've got a little piece of paper and I've got a book that I'm writing in. All of a sudden, and it's 3 knocks intentionally, like it was trying to get my attention. And I said, are you trying to get my attention? and silence. I said, I'm here. If you're trying to get my attention, I'm here. So why don't we do this? Why don't you knock one time if you want my attention? Silence. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to wait, because sometimes you have to be patient. And the reason you have to be patient is because it takes that energy a lot to absorb, to be doing this type of thing. It's just that they just don't run around, hello. And the fact that it was getting ready to storm, I always say it's always better to do an investigation during a storm, because the electrons are charging. All of a sudden I hear, okay, I'm like, okay, what would you like to know? I'm going to turn my device on, and I'm here. You just say whatever you want to say. You just say whatever you want to say. And just silence. Then I hear a huff again coming from the other side of the room, that exhale, that it's a huge, as in not a growl, but a huge, I don't even want to do it in the microphone because it is a big, huge growl. And I thought, oh God, that poor girl. If she sits here at night and starts hearing all this stuff, she probably is weirded out about this. So I'm walking around a little bit, taking my paper, writing things down, writing dates down, and I hear this noise, and I go back, and because I had my device, kind of like this, just standing up on a table, just like this, and then it fell over. There's no reason why it should have fallen over, except energy. And I thought, oh, here we go. We're about ready to get into a hot place here. Here we go. Then this young lady comes back down. Her name was Laura. And she looks at me, and she was just white as a sheet. And I said, what's going on? Are you okay? And she said, sometimes when I come down here and I have to walk through this tunnel, I hear whispering. I sometimes feel things. And she said this time, this is what she did. She said this time, it felt like my hair. Something grabbed my hair and held it up like this and then dropped it. That's a hotbed. And I said, okay, what are you going to do now? And she said, I'm going to stay in here. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to stay in here. I need to relax, but I need to go to the bathroom. And I said, do you want me to go with you? I'll stand outside the door. And she said, will you please? And I said, yeah, I'll go back. I'll go through the bathroom, of course. So I'm standing, outside the door, whatever. It was just a little, cubby closet. So I didn't want to be like standing right there on the door. So she's finishing, she's done, she comes out, and she, the paper towels, the cheap ones that they put in the, the things that on the wall that you pull them out, they're not even a napkin. It's just so flippin' cheap. And you're supposed to wipe your hands on those things. Well, she was wiping her hands on that. Okay, she pulled some out, was wiping their hands on that. There was a wastebasket outside the door. She comes out and she said, tell me when you're hungry and you want to order breakfast. And I said, anytime you want to, honey, that's fine. I wouldn't mind a cup of coffee if you got a coffee machine, anytime you want. And just then she said, okay. And she didn't toss it. She's right over the wastebasket. Right over the wastebasket, she drops this paper. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have a little napkin here. I'm going to give you a little show of what this was. She just drops the paper like this, okay? This is what it was supposed to do. When she dropped it, she dropped it and went, the paper, it's like somebody was smacked it. And she looked at me, she goes, how did that happen? And I said, search me, baby, I don't know. And I said, let's go get some coffee. And at this time she was shaking like this because she was rattled from coming through so she was visibly shaking. And I said, you know what? That could really be anything. I said, it could have been, and I was just really trying to calm her down. And I wouldn't say, oh, well, we got a ghost here. It's going to be like, no, I wanted to calm her down. So this little sweetheart, cuter than can be, looked like a little cheerleader, blonde, sweet, had a boyfriend, She's sitting there. She said, I just feel like calling my boyfriend, but I can't. I got to wait till my shift is over. And I said, you know what? I'll be here. I'll wait for you because I want to look at some things. And she said, will you do that? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, sure. I said, but I want to go back into that hallway. And I know you don't want to go with me, but will you leave the door open? She goes, we're not supposed to. But I will block it. So that way, because you know what I was really concerned about? It's not that I was concerned about not getting back in. I was concerned that door would shut and she wouldn't get out. That it would be an episode that she wouldn't get out because it was starting to get wild and active. So I go over, I pick up my little device from this little table thing that was sitting there by the drawers, the people drawers. And so she blocked the door open. She put an empty gurney between the door, like the door, put the gurney into the door so the door wouldn't come shut. I go down through that hall, and I'm not kidding. It's been a long time since I have been in a very active place like that. And sometimes the little poltergeists love to mess with you. So, they're doing and I'm just not saying it. I'm not reacting. I'm not saying anything. And you're hearing the whispers, and whistles. Now, they weren't whistling at me. No. Yeah, that would be my luck. I'm getting cat calls from the spirit world. The whistles will sometimes mean that they're actually trying to call more energy in. And I'm thinking, oh, this is lovely. They're just calling their little backup troops here with them. And there was whistling. There was everything else. Oh, I caught a bunch of good stuff. There was, the wolf calls from the spirit world. There you go. That's my luck, my darlings. There you are. So I'm getting all this. And so I go back into the room. So I go back in the room. We moved. She said, I've got to move that gurney because if somebody comes down here, I'm going to be in trouble. I said, it's okay. Well, let's just move it. We'll close the door. So we were sitting there talking, and she goes, do you want to play cards? I said, honey, I don't really want to play cards, but if you want to sit here and play solitaire and we just keep quiet, I'm intruding on your space. You work, you do what you want to do, and you go for it. And she said, okay, I want to get my mind off some things. And I'm not allowed to be on the phone, or I would call my boyfriend. And you really couldn't get a cell signal out of there. I can tell you that right now. A cell signal was not something that you could get. So she has this little deck of cards, and she's playing solitaire. She puts one card down, puts another card down. She's got them all down, just like a little gust of wind. Off they go onto the floor. And I thought, oh, they know they can mess with her. This is what they're, and she goes, I said, honey, do you go through this all the time? She said, sometimes. I said, what's the coroner say? What's the ME say about what do they say? And she said, nothing. They just say that all the sounds from a morgue are normal. I said, but can I tell you this? This stuff isn't normal. These aren't normal morgue sounds. She goes, no, I know they're not. So I'm down here and I'm thinking, what am I supposed to tell my client? I'm having everything happen to me, but I have no indication of what happened with her son. So she finally called over to the restaurant across the street. Biscuits, gravy, coffee, whatever. They brought it over, got the juice. They fixed us up. They got the juice, da-da-da-da-da. And we're sitting there eating. I go to use the restroom, wash my hands, splash a little water on my face, kind of get ready for another couple of hours. And just as I put my hand on the doorknob, I heard a young man's voice go, Mom? And I knew that was him. So I said, just a minute. So I went in there, splashed the water on my face, came out, washed my hands, did all the things. So I talked to him like, Mom, I said, how are you, honey? I said, your mom is worried about you and she wants to know that you're all right. And there were noises. And at one point, it heard like somebody was crying. And this poor girl, she told me, she said, I can't hack this anymore. She said, after all this, I'm done. When I leave today, I'm putting in my whatever week notice. I'm done. Cheers. And I said, are you sure? They pay you pretty good here. Pardon me, because you know what? I never want anybody to lose their job. And I said, maybe I can just kind of clear things out a little bit for you and calm down and talk to Lieutenant Baxter. Just maybe. Okay. So anyway, I got distracted by the chat because I love to see what you guys are saying. So, Prost, ein Prosit, der Gemütlichkeit, ein Prosit, der Gemütlichkeit, 1, 2, 3, Zoff mal. All right, anyway, back. So I saw the cheers in the chat. That's why I did that. Prost. I said, are you sure? I said, I don't want you to leave your job. This pays pretty good. You're going to college and she said, ain't worth it. I leave here, I'm a nervous wreck until the next night. I can't deal with it. She goes, I can't enjoy my weekends because I'm always afraid I'm going to be somewhere and I'm going to get called in. And she said, I can't enjoy my weekends because I'm constantly thinking I only have 2 days till I have to go back there. And she said, I sit here and I shake and I'm a nervous wreck. And they do drug testing. And even though they are prescribed drugs, I cannot be on a prescribed drug that is chilling me out because I may not be able to perform what I'm supposed to be performing. I said, okay, so why don't we do this? She was working the night shift at the morgue. So I said, why don't we do this? Why don't I ask them to just chill? and go away and stop this and move on. I said, have you ever had anybody? She said, no, we've never had a paranormal investigator here. She said, and if I told the ME or the coroner about all this, my boss, the doctors, they would probably fire me anyway. And I said, well, no, you don't want to do that. So then we get talking about the history. And I said, where does the tunnel go that goes out here? Because there's a door. I mean, there was a door. And if you got close to it, you could almost feel a little bit of the air coming, because it wasn't sealed, you know what I mean? But I certainly wasn't going to open it. I mean, although we were there by ourselves. So it was, you could, if you went up next to it, it almost smelled like dirt. If that made a, so you could tell it was nothing that had been used in a very, very long time. So anyway, yes, I know all the beer drinking songs, my darling, all the little kid songs. That's what we learned when we were little. So anyway, we had, was standing there. So I went out into the hall and I said, look, it's time to move on now into the tunnel. It's time to move on. You don't have any business here. What do you do hanging out? What's the purpose? There's no benefit of you hanging out. Time to move on. So I went back and told her, I said, where does this go? And she goes, we've got a lot of maps. Oh my God, I thought I was in heaven. Maps? Are you kidding me? Give me maps. Do you have floor plans? Yeah, I got floor plans. Oh, okay. I said, so look, if you needed to check on something, could you go up on the 3rd floor, which is here? And she said, there's a 4th floor, which is here. I said, you're going to quit anyway? You brave enough to go up there? And she looked, and it just, to this day, the relief and the confidence that came over her face. And she looked at me and went, hell yes, ma'am. And I thought I couldn't hardly hold it back. I was just laughing. I couldn't hold it back. Uh-oh. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Sorry. It sounded like somebody, you know how I described the front of my condo, and then there's a staircase on the other side of the walk that goes up to the units upstairs? Someone fell down the steps. I heard someone say, are you okay? And I'm waiting to hear, do we need to call a crime scene tech? Or do we need a tank team here? Yeah, you heard female voices. Okay, yeah, that was, are you okay? Maybe it could just be a ghost. Yeah, no, we're good. I'm good. I'm here. Ain't nothing coming in here. So where was I? Oh yeah, hell yeah, ma'am. And at that point, it was like this confidence rolled over her, and she was just like, yeah, let's go. So, well, listen, you see what I see, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take a time out. This is the front of the condo. This is the back. This is a side wall because I live in an end unit. The upstairs, you go this way, it goes through the kitchen, out the back door, and there is a wooden deck from the upstairs, so the people in the upstairs can come out there and sit, do whatever. About 2 years ago, college kids would move in and out upstairs to the point where I just wanted to it just bothered me because they were so loud and drinking and oh my gosh. So it was Easter Sunday. I know, isn't this funny though? Oh my gosh, on BB, imagine we're all here listening to Lady Z and we hear people talking. I'm thinking, you have guests. I'm a ninny. No. It's all good. It's all good. So Easter morning, I'm laying in bed, texting. Was it a burro? Was it a jackass? Was it a donkey that Jesus rode? Stuff that you just think about, what size shoe did Jesus take? That stuff that I just text because I'm weird and I want to, just Google stuff. They were so loud upstairs. I came out, I got dressed, I was in the kitchen. I went out the back door and they were on the back of that porch. And I mean, talk about drunk. I'm not kidding. I have never seen people that drunk. And my son, who is like my dad now, I just want you to know, my son who will look at me and go, Mom, I really think that you need to do, Mom, now, are you doing this, Mom? Are you doing that, Mom? I'm like, yes, Dad, I'm doing that. Which, there comes a time when all that stuff changes. Anyway, I don't know because he was barefooted most of the time. That's what I get. They wore sandals, but they wrapped their feet in skins of, whatever, in sheep's wool. Anyway, I go outside and I look up there and I said, are you guys going to be done? It is Easter morning. I would like to get to sleep. I do have to work today. And they look at me, all this other stuff. And I said, fine. I said, just try to be quiet. I walk in and all of a sudden I hear this screaming and this heck of a noise. I go running out there and hear one of these girls fell off of that wooden deck above my patio, drunk. She's laying on the ground. I went up to her and I said, are you dead? And she goes, no. I said, you should be. What is wrong with you? It scared me so bad. And I said, stay there. Don't move. You may have something broken. Let's call an ambulance. She goes, oh no. She said, I'm fine. She gets up. They're all busting out laughing and goes right around the building, goes up the front door and goes right back again. I looked at them and I said, how did she not die? That's how bloody well drunk she was, because she bounced when she hit that. I mean, and it was ground. It was not cement. I know. I went up to her. Are you dead? I'm like, yes. So anyway, drunk people are like rubber. They sure are. But anyway, so I'm used to the weirdness here. Back to the other weird stuff. So I said, let's go. So this place had no elevators. They had the kind of like the cargo. So if you needed to take someone down to where they would get an x-ray, or if you needed to move a person, it would be, one of these type of elevators that you would put them on. Dear God in heaven, it's a wonder nobody got hurt. Well, they're in a hospital, I guess. So anyway, we went up these stairs, and I got to tell you, probably when this place was first built, it was cool. Talk about a Gone with the Wind house. That's the first thing that I'm thinking. Oh my heck. This, yeah, kind of like a dumb waiter, only is bigger. And the stairway, the main stairway, went up through here. You walk through there, and it went up through there, and it was stunning. I mean, the woodwork was, but nobody ever took care of it. It's like, oh shoot, I would have wished I could have buy this place, and nobody took care of it. There was stuff peeling from the ceiling, all kinds of weird things. I mean, just weird because, hello, this is supposed to be a hospital. How do you pass inspections? But I kind of think it's like the hospital that people forgot. You know, it wasn't on the radar very long. And it morphed in for me trying to find out who this lady's son was, or what was going on with her son, to looking up in here. Well, we went through, she took me up through almost all these rooms and talk about shadow people, whispers. Now, a lot of this she didn't see, but there were, tomorrow is another day. Yeah, the hospital that you never just start from, that's right. So, but it was so gorgeous. I just couldn't. I mean, I wanted to see more, but she wasn't seeing that when we were walking places and you catch something looking out of one of the rooms at her, at whatever. And I made sure I stayed close with her, and I said, look, at any time you feel weird, no, I don't feel weird. This is good. This is okay. We go through all this, and we did not go into this section because there were actual patients, and it was cleaner, it was nicer, it was lit, it was, all that stuff. But we go here, and there was a secret staircase that went up to this room. And I said, what is this? And she said, the secret staircase was for all these people that were on the second floor. If the Confederates were coming, because a lot of people don't realize that the state of Tennessee mostly fought for the North, didn't fight for the South. It was kind of like the state was divided into up through Kentucky, and through, then you get into the deep South of Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana and all those. So there was a hidden stairway, and I would have never known it. It was in a wall, like a part of the woodwork was the door. And it was the absolute coolest thing that I've ever seen. And it was it was the real, it wasn't the fake that somebody added on later. And it went up to this room. We were up there, and then the sun started coming up. And I said, this is the coolest thing that I've ever seen. And she said, I've been up here twice. There were old beds up there. Two beds up there. There was a desk. There wasn't anything around. There wasn't anything. And actually, it felt fine. It didn't feel like there was anything hanging out. It felt fine. And I think that's probably why she felt fine too. So finally, it was getting time. She said, I've got to go back downstairs. I said, yeah, you don't want to get in trouble. So we go back down. We go through that tunnel again. And I could feel like I'm walking. Here, wait, hello. I'm walking. And I could feel, you know how you feel like something is walking this close behind you? I could just feel that. And I'm thinking, oh boy, Anyway, I'll have to think about that for a minute, Cat Randall. What direction the window faced. Because we did see the sun coming up, but there was a window on the other side too. I'm thinking this faced east. up here. I'm thinking that it did. So anyway, we go back down. We're going through this spooky tunnel to get to the morgue. We get down there. Cards are messed up. Papers are on the floor. This was carrying on. That was carrying on. It was this and that and the other thing. And it's like, oh my gosh. And I said, was somebody down here? She goes, no. That happens a lot when I put things in place. I have to put everything away. I mean, her files were all over the floor. This poor girl, they were just yanking her chain every time they could. So it just got time for me to go. And so I'm sitting there. I said, you know what? Before I go, we had our breakfast and, all that stuff. We did our little exploring. I mean, I was there probably for 6 hours. And I said, before we go, I need to sit. I need to sit down. And I went over and sat by the drawers, and there were some papers on the desk. And there was a paper. Hold on. This is weird. It'll give you the idea. There was a paper laying close to where I was sitting, and it looked like a scribbling, and I sort of kind of made it out to be Mom. Now, was it? I don't know. Was it there before? No, it was not. But it was, and I'm going to tell you, I believe in automatic writing. The reason being is I left my pen with my notebook. There wasn't any other pen around. There wasn't any other, it was just this little, it came time to leave. And I told her, I said, look, I want to look at these maps. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He wrote his mom a note. That's what I was thinking. So I took it with me. And I wanted to look at the maps because I wanted to look at the perimeter. I mean, they had floor plans. They had all kinds of different little things. So I wanted to look at the maps, and I looked to see where the tunnel exited, because you don't go in a tunnel without going, because usually what would happen is if they couldn't overtake a building like this, the enemy, they would loot it and burn it. That's just the way it was. I mean, just the way it was, unfortunately. So they would have to have a way to escape. That's it. And so, no, this is not a college, it's a hospital in Tennessee. So, so I left, said goodbye to her, gave her my number, told her to keep in touch, let me know. I waited for the ME to come in. He came in, and I mean, he wasn't very personable. He said, "Did you get what you came for?" And I said, "Oh, it was a very nice visit. I really enjoyed sitting with your the young lady down there, and I think that she's very good, very blah blah blah." So I said, I'm just going to walk around a little bit. I said, do you mind? He goes, no, I don't mind at all. So my car is parked in front, like over in here. And I thought, I'm going to walk around here. I bet I walked for an hour and a half. I never did find out where that tunnel exited. I'm sure if you went through that tunnel, you could probably find it, but I'm sure it was sealed. But in the back, on the side, in the trees, was one of the oldest cemeteries that I had ever seen. And it was so sad because on those stones were written unknown. Unknown, 1865. Unknown female, 1872. Unknown baby, just wild. I mean, is so sad. I mean, they at least put up markers. but there it was in a woods, and so there were trees. And one of the things that always bothers me is if you run up on one of these old cemeteries, that the trees obviously grow, and sometimes they grow through the graves. Sometimes you can see a little something something, and that's just sad. That's just sad. So anyway, I spent a lot of time in there and whatever. And what an experience to be there. I always wanted to go back again, but it was about a year later and they closed it completely down because I was going on my way to Nashville and thought, hey, I got a little time. I'm going to take a little side trip. Went over, stopped at the grocery that was close by and said, whatever happened to the hospital? Whatever happened to the people? And they said, there was no funding. Their people just didn't want that to happen. I said, what are they going to do with it? Who owns it? Okay, so I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere. But that's the way it was. And I would certainly love to know about those tunnels. Now, the last time when I talked to my lawyer friend who lives in Nashville, he said that they heard that they tore it down, which means if they tore it down, they probably would, any tunnels that would have been there would have been filled in. So I ended up calling this lady and I said, look, I was here. I don't know. I heard a young man say, Mom. And I gave her the piece of paper. Now it didn't look like, but it was scribbled. It was scribbled. And I said, I want to think that that's him. And she cried. She said, I cannot believe that and she offered me money. I wouldn't take it because I had this trip turned into something for me as well. So I certainly wasn't going to, and so, anyway, so that was the story. One of the stories of the hospital and the morgue that I had been in. And I can tell you this, that morgue was an experiment. It was an experiment for me because there was this part of me that wanted to just be, kind of weirded out. Because quite frankly, I am more weirded out about our living humans these days than the paranormal. But that's why we're here, right, boo? Because why be paranormal? Why be normal when we can be paranormal? I screwed that up. Why be normal when we can be paranormal? But this was different for me. But I literally The cards speak. Justice listens. Welcome to the unseen. Truth doesn't hide forever. not from the eyes that see. Spirits stir, clues awaken, let the seeing begin. Behind every crime, a shadow speaks. I'm Lady Zelda. Welcome to Seeing Crime. Hello, my darlings, and welcome to you. I think you can hear me. We are this close to a Mercury retrograde. Good evening, my darlings. Good evening to my beautiful mods, and good evening to True Oracle, who are here. Oh my goodness, I've got so much to tell you. Hello and welcome. Unfortunately, this will be the last episode of Help, I'm Haunted for 2025. We may sneak one in, maybe New Year's. Something. Anyway, my darlings, I'm so glad that you are here. I've got so much. There we are. Okay. Let me set the center stage for you, my darlings. Get my notes. Because I got to have notes. Here we go. In 1965, Ron and Louise Defoe moved from Brooklyn into a house that was located on 112 Ocean Avenue. They and their 5 children christened the home as High Hopes. That's sad, isn't it? And for 9 years, the neighbors described this family to the New York Times as a nice, normal family. This was a large Dutch colonial revival house situated in a suburban neighborhood in Amityville in the South Shore of Long Island, New York. Long Island. On November 13th, my darlings, listen to this. November 13th, almost 51 years ago. On November 13th of 1974, 23-year-old Ronald Defoe Jr. unalived 6 members of his family in their home. That was an episode. He tried to fool the police. He went to a local bar, said that somebody had unalived his family, blamed it on the mob because he said his dad, was a mob, sold cars, did things involved with the mob. Finally, he admitted to the crime. There's more. So then, my darlings, on December 18th of 1975, the Lutz family, George and Kathy, with their 3 children, moved in. Much of the Defoe's family furniture remained in the house and was included for $400 as a part of the deal. Now, you're going to know why later on why that was a bad idea. A friend of George Lutz learned about the history of the house and wouldn't let it go, insisted on having the house blessed. 28 days later, they fled from the home. They packed and they moved, and they left everything. It wasn't long after that, Ed and Lorraine Warren were summoned to the home, and Lorraine said she has never seen such a home active with demonic energy. The Lutzes divorced in the 1980s. Kathy passed away in 2004 of emphysema, while George passed away of a heart disease in 2006. Ironically enough, their children went on to deny that things went on in the home. I beg to differ. William Defoe Jr. passed away at the Sullivan Correctional Institute March 12th of 2021. He was 69 years old. He was serving 6 25-year-to-life sentences and was denied parole by the parole board several times. His death was announced in the New York Times on my birthday, March 15th. Some places never leave you, even after you've driven away. In September of 2016, I stood at the edge of Ocean Avenue in Amityville, Long Island, a street that hums with the kind of silence you can feel in your bones. The air was heavy. The house was impossibly still, and what I felt and saw there that day has stayed with me ever since. You think you're prepared when you read the books and you see the films and all that stuff, but standing there is different. The light bends a little oddly. Even the sound of your own breath seems to pull against you. I remember the creak of the front step, the way the air changed when I crossed the threshold, like the house was deciding whether or not to let me in. Tonight, I'll tell you exactly what happened inside that house when I visited the Amityville house in Long Island, New York. And I will also tell you the aftermath. So this may be a little long, my darlings, because I'm going to start from the beginning. I was living in Tennessee. Pardon me. Yes, and I have been drinking pickle juice like there's no tomorrow. I was living in Tennessee in 2016, and you know the story that my son told about Shrek, how I was dating Shrek? Well, Shrek's family lived in New York, Long Island. And when we got up there, they welcomed me with open arms. I loved his family. His mother was very good to me. Now, here's the thing. His mother was a retired real estate agent, and she came to us because they knew what I did, whatever. So there we go. Hold on. We've got Miss Janet, Misdemeanor. You're going to have to catch the replay, my darling. So don't you worry. We'll be here when you get back, but thanks for stopping in and saying hello. So glad that you're here. You have a good evening, honey. Thank you. And if you're not following Misdemeanor, you need to, because she's got all the T, all the X, Y, Zs, and she dots the I's and crosses the T's on her show. So I want you to go over there and follow her if you haven't. If you like true crime and the court cases, she's the one. She's the one. All right, so back to the story, my darlings. So we went up there. I was to meet the family. There was talk about he and I getting married. I wasn't interested. But that's neither here nor there, right? I mean, it doesn't make any difference. I wasn't interested. But I wanted to go to New York because we were going to stop by the Gettysburg area and the battlefields. So why would I miss up on a trip? So we go to New York. It's September. It's beautiful. It's kind of warm but chilly at night. The leaves were turned. It was beautiful. First time that I had been there. I've been to New York proper, but I've not been to Long Island and all that. I wanted to go to the Montauk Lighthouse. I wanted to go to all these places. That was a part of the plan until his mother came and said, because they know what I did. So it was kind of like, oh my gosh, we have a celebrity. I don't think that they did, whatever. So we were there, and his mom says, do you remember the Amityville Horror? And I said, oh my, that, and horror is what I said. Horror. I said, oh my gosh, do I ever? I mean, I remember when that whole thing unfolded. She said, the house is for sale. I'm like, no, we have to go. She says, I'll get us in. I'll get us in. This was September of 2016. So she makes these phone calls. She calls the next day and she says, well, they need a proof of funds letter. I said, no problem, we'll get it. And she said, they want one for $850,000. I said, how much is the house listed for? She said, 800. And I said, well, that just seems a little weird. But if they want one, we'll pull it together. I called my lawyer, pulled some strings, called in some chips. We got a proof of funds letter. Now, the rules were we could not take our cell phones. We could not do any of that. We couldn't take any of that in because they had a lot of people that just wanted to go and be nosy. Just like me, because I really had no intention of buying that house. But I heard so many stories of the Lutz family when they were there and the furniture of these people. And when you hear about all that furniture, no, it's not weird anytime, and especially when you go into a high-end house, if you don't have a mortgage, if you're not pre-approved, sellers want what they call a proof of funds. They want to know that you're able to pay for it before they start letting you into their house. It's a normal thing. I've had to do it for many homes. Not a biggie. So we make arrangements to go. It was supposed to be Shrek, his sister, his niece, and his mother. So we're excited. We're just so excited. We can't wait till we get there. We get there, we pull up, and the realtor is sitting on the road. Wasn't in the driveway. Now the driveway is a kind of a shared driveway. It's concrete throughout, and it's a neighbor. And I'm like, okay. Now the boathouse, which was really big in the movies and everything else, supposedly Mr. Lutz had an experience in the boathouse. I wanted to go in there first, and the realtor said, you can't go down there. I said, wait a minute. Hold the phone. I just gave you a proof of funds letter. I'm going to go. And he's like, no. And I thought, okay. And so his mom is looking at me and like, don't wipe out the realtor while we're here. We want to see this place. So anyway, we try to go in. Now this realtor was a young man. He was shaking. It was on a lockbox and had a keypad on this house. So it was like double. They didn't want anybody to get in. Pardon me. He was shaking, trying to get the locks, trying to get the key into the one lock. And I thought, oh boy, he's watched too many movies. Thank you, Jack. I said, oh my goodness, this guy's watched too many movies. So we go up to the front door, and he won't go in. He said, there you go. And I said, well, what if we have any questions? He said, if you have any questions, you can, oh, that was Riley that just walked by. He said, if you have any questions, you can ask me when you come out. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this poor guy, he's freaked out. So I ground myself. I put my hand on the frame, the door frame. It was hot. And I thought, hi, Candy, my darling. So, hi, Rebecca. So the door frame is hot. And it shocked me. It didn't scare me. It shocked me for a minute because I ground myself always, and especially in this joint, I'm grounding myself. So we get in, and the realtor closes the door behind us. It is hotter than fire in that house. Hot. Like I had a coat on. I had a little jeans jacket. I thought I looked cute that day. I mean, time out. I always look cuter in the fall than I do in the anyway. I thought I looked cute that day. I had this heavy jeans jacket and a sweater on, and and I thought, oh my God, why is it so hot? And I mean, the water I was starting to perspire. His mom was too. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she went over, there was a thermostat in the hallway. And she said, it shows that it's off, but it shouldn't be this hot in here. I said, oh no, it's hot. We go in. Now we are at the foot of the stairwell that goes up. Now the stairwell, like when you walk, see, this is the front door right here. When you walk into the when you walk in immediately, kind of to the right, there's a stairway that goes up. There's a landing and a window on the other side of the house. And then it goes up to the second floor. There's a third floor. And in this room right here was Ronald Defoe Jr.'s bedroom. Over here was, I think, one of the girls' bedroom and then the boys' bedroom. I don't know. I don't remember how it lays out. Anyway, all of a sudden, Shrek goes in. There's a door that goes to the front, and it would be this room like right here. So he goes in and he starts hopping around. He starts doing the, oh, come on, demons. The great Zelda is here. I'm thinking, oh, shoot. His mom looks at him and says, what are you doing? What is that? Now, time out. It was just his mom and I and Shrek that went into the home because the sister got weirded out, sat in the car, and the niece, the sister's daughter, was so weirded out. I know how it's pronounced, but I'm not going to pronounce it here the way it is because I don't want to call in that energy, but thank you. I know how it, they were weirded out. So we went in there. He's dancing around. Here she is. And all of a sudden his face starts changing. I'm thinking, what the heck? So I looked at his mom and I said, I don't know about you, but I've had enough because the heat was so hot. We did not get past in that front. That's fine, Cupcake. We did not get further than the foyer or the foyer. He all of a sudden tears through and goes upstairs. And you can hear him running from room to room. I'm here. I'm here. Come and take me over. I'm here. I'm here. And he said, the great and powerful Zelda is here. And then he would go, ha, 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 ha. And I'm thinking, this guy is completely. And I wanted to break up with him before I knew that the moment that my hiney got over the Tennessee line, done. He's jumping and going all through the house, going through the basement. I turned around and looked at his mom and I said, I think it's time to go. She said, I think so too. I said, this just isn't even interesting or fun anymore. I don't know what is going on, but I don't want any part of it. We turned around and she tried to open the door and the door wouldn't open. She said, well, did that door lock? Did he lock us in? And I said, I don't think so. So I tried it, and it was like a steel door. You couldn't even budge it. You couldn't even rattle it. And it was not locked because you could tell that it had a thumb lock on the inside that would have had to be locked. So things just started getting weirder. So he comes barreling down off the steps like he's jumping and being weird, goes into the front room again, and his mother follows. And I'm thinking, I'm not following that crazy loon. I stayed there. All of a sudden, I heard this noise, this walking upstairs. And his mother heard it too. And his mother looked and she said, did the realtor come in? And I said, no. And she said, what is that walking up there? I said, I don't know. Maybe it's the furnace. I knew exactly what it was. I'm standing there looking up the steps. Now, I'm going to describe this to you. Remember, as you came in the front door, you would look up the steps, then there was a landing, and then the stairway went back toward the second floor. I was looking up there, and all of a sudden I saw this little arm and this hand, that the fingers were like spiny gargoyle looking. This face looks down and looks right at me. And that hand curled right around, just real slow, curled right around the banister. So I'm standing there and I'm just thinking to myself, what do I do? I've got a crazy guy that could turn around and unalive us at any moment. And a mother who is oblivious to the world, who's chasing after him, thinking that her baby boy is a nutbag, and he is. And if you're watching, you know you are. So I'm standing there. And I just said, by the power that is over me, you stay away from me in the name of Jesus Christ. And that thing went back like that. But it stayed on the staircase with his hand on the banister. I'm going to show you what it is. And don't forget, we got a drawing tonight, my darlings. Give me a second. I'm going to show you what this is, and you have to look closely. You have to look closely. Now look over there at the top of the stairs. You see this arm? Let me see if I can make it a little bigger for you. Oops, I made it bigger for me. I don't want to do that. Let me see if I can make it bigger for you. There. At the top of those stairs. Now, this is a real picture, by the way. This is a real photograph of how that looks out. So the door would be just like you're standing in front of that stair. This is an exact picture of how it looked from the listing and how it looked when we were there. Now, I brightened that little arm and hander, right? Hello. I brightened that a little bit so you could see exactly what it looks like. And that's what was there. You have to look at the ceiling, and it looks like it's by my grip. Let me take the grifting QR code off. See there at the top of the steps? To the left, about 3/4 of the way when you get up to the steps, to the left, you see there's an arm hanging down from the ceiling. That's kind of like what I saw. It's kind of like what I saw. So yeah. Now let me tell you a little bit. Time out. I need to go back in time. Yeah, it looks like a little X-ray left hand is what it looks like. I wanted to brighten it up and I couldn't brighten it. But let me tell you a little backstory. Yeah, the long fingers, but they were spiny, like with these long fingernails. Yeah. Now let's back up into the 1980s when the Lutz family was living there. And they said all of this stuff was happening around them. And Mr. Lutz was literally affected himself. When they left, they cut and run. I mean, seriously, they just literally cut and run. When they did that, they left all of the furniture there. Now, the furniture that they bought was the furniture. Now, that's not a real picture of the hand. I put that on there because we weren't allowed to take our phones in. Okay. So but that's resembling. So, just disclaimer, that's not the real hand. It is sort of kind of what I saw. The best way, because what I saw was up a little further and I couldn't get the angle of the stairway. So the hand is not real, but the room is. That's an original picture. So when this happened, when William Defoe Jr. unalived his sisters and brothers and his parents, you can imagine that red stuff went everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It was all over. I was doing some research 2 years ago and got a hold of some crime scene pictures. And I'll tell you what, it was horrible. Horrible. He unalived them while they were in their beds sleeping. So there was a flow down over the beds, on the wall, in the carpet. Now, when the crime scene people went there, because obviously it was on the market, these people, the Lutz people bought it, they kept that furniture. They got rid of the mattresses. And quite frankly, to tell you the truth, it's been 51 years, and some of the original wallpaper is still up in the bedrooms. That is what the realtor told us. In that wallpaper is still some spatters from that crime scene that never changed. So you can imagine those Lutz people for $400, even though, now listen, things happen. And I've lived in houses before where people passed, but not violently. And I have to wonder, were the Lutz mom and dad, Kathy and George, were they just kind of like dumb? Can I say that? Were they just like dumb? Put their kids in the rooms, the same furniture that these kids had, only they changed the mattresses? So when these people left, the Lutz left, Kathy Lutz was cooking. And they just left everything. They left. She now obviously turned the stove off, but they left the food on the table. They left everything. They left it. Period. Then, of course, they started having these problems. And this man came in and wrote the book. Now, the man came in and wrote the book, and then William Defoe, yes, his name is DeFeo Jr., thought he could get some type of an insanity defense because of this book and wanted to try to get out. And they turned that down. It pains me to think that 2 of those children would have been my age today. And I'll bring you into the future. So when they left, they just left. They basically had they basically had the clothes on their back. They grabbed a few things and they cut and run. But they had a few psychics that went. And they had Ed and Lorraine Warren go. And they sat around this table. And it was one of the most bizarre things that you could ever see. If you want to watch these. In fact, I found something today from In Search Of. Remember with Leonard Nimoy, In Search Of? There's an episode about the Amityville Horror. So now come back to the most recent past. So I'm basically pounding on this door to get out of this house. Bottom line. And we're trying to yell at the sister that's outside in the, his mom is at the window going like this to the sister, trying to get her attention to come and get the door. So we're pounding on the door. This nutcase Shrek is rolling all around this house like he is a nutcase. And at first I thought he's just doing it to be a jerk and to show off in front of his mommy. And then I thought, oh, I don't think so. Because when he was in the front room and he turned around to talk to his mom, he looked over his mom and he looked at me. And it was one of those looks where he lowered his chin and his eyebrow raised. And it was an evil gaze and his face changed. And I thought, oh, here we go. Hello, here we go. Finally, the realtor comes up. We're pounding on the door. Realtor comes up, opens the door. And we said, what the heck? We couldn't get out. He goes, what do you mean? It's unlocked. He could not understand. So then, now I want you to know this. He was okay till we went there that day. He was okay. He was okay till we went there that day. So we go outside and the realtor said, well, you interested? And I said, well, we didn't really get to see the house because we were locked in. I said, it was so hot. He goes, what do you mean it was hot? I said, it was so hot. I said, look at us. We are drenched. And he said, the electric's not on. I said, why is it so hot in there? He said, I don't know. He said, so are you interested? And I said, not today. If I want to go down to the boathouse. He goes, you can't go in the boathouse. Okay. I said, then I'm not interested. He didn't say thank you, didn't say goodbye, didn't say go to the hot place. I didn't have to. I was in it. He runs to his car, gets in, and out he goes. So we go out and we're talking. We get in the car and we're talking about this, and Shrek is driving. The idea is that we are now to go to Montauk because I want to see the lighthouse. So there's a stretch of road that goes from Amityville to Montauk. And the realtor did, Dee. So there's a stretch of road that goes to time out. The boathouse is supposedly where Mr. Lutz had some experiences, and I wanted to go see it. I mean, right? So we go out, there's a stretch of road, and we're talking. All of a sudden, there's a truck coming on the left-hand side, and Shrek veers over and gets in that lane. And his mom is like, get over, what are you doing? His sister is screaming. And I'm like, Father, I hope I get to see my children again. Please protect me. I'm in the backseat praying. All of a sudden, he gets back on the road again. Then he does this, then he does that. He's driving sporadically all over. We run out of gas. Who runs out of gas? He runs out of gas. We had to call AAA to come and bring us gas. We were out there at almost sunset. We finally get the gas. We finally go to Montauk. And he looks at me and goes, do you want to go up in the lighthouse? I said, well, I was thinking about it. Maybe your mom would like to go. And he said, no, I want you to go up at the top. I said, no, I'm not interested in going up. I have a height thing because holy mackerel. I'm thinking this dude's going to get me up in a lighthouse and push me. I mean, his face changed. His face just changed. Well, I'm in a different state. You know, you don't want to break because give me a ride to where, right? I mean, give me a ride to where? So I wasn't going to leave his mom. His sister was there. So we finally get back to her house, and he's creepy. He's sitting in a chair all night looking at me. And I couldn't sleep because he was looking at me all night. And I thought, this guy is possessed. And so his mom was there, and I said, Hey, I said, isn't there one of these big, beautiful Catholic churches around here? And she goes, oh, yeah, there's this church, whatever. I said, can we go visit it today? My intention was to scoop up a little bit of holy water and give it a toss his way. I took a little bit of salt. No, she had some sage in the cabinet first. And I lit some of that sage and I brought it in the bedroom. And he goes, what is that? And I said, oh, it's this beautiful incense that your mom, he flipped out. And I thought, oh, heck. So I took it out of the room because sometimes sage does that. And you got to be very careful about what you use. So I get a little bit of salt. Bless the salt in the name of Christ, according to James chapter 5, doing all this stuff. I go back in the room and I'm sprinkling it on the bed, I'm sprinkling this salt everywhere. Not enough that, because who wants to walk around? She's got hardwood floors. So if, you know what I mean, I happened to throw a little bit on him and he had his back toward me and I threw a little bit back and he jerked like this and goes, what are you doing hitting me? I said, I didn't hit you. I'm standing right here. It was the salt that I put to him. Finally, it's time to go home. I drove. We stopped in Gettysburg. He was not the same. Had to stop in Philly. Got a Philly cheese. Had to do that. No peach pie on this trip. I drove that entire trip home. It's like 14 hours. I wasn't about to stop. I had the pedal to the metal, baby. I was going. We get home. Now comes part 2.